Indeed, that's the matter we're sinking our teeth into. Just right on the same program yesterday, we had asked the police if indeed an investigation was going on to let us see the suspect. And it would seem that the police, either they were listening or they already had it planned, eventually went to that plan. And that was what we saw yesterday, including a very comprehensive statement which they released to journalists. But we have with us this morning Mr. Isaac Arumudu, who is a legal practitioner, to help us dissect and make sense of some of what was revealed yesterday by the police. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I don't know what your initial impressions were. First, when you heard that, because the police did say before now that they were investigating the matter, that they will soon come out with findings. And then eventually, they did come out with findings, parading 14 suspects. They say 7 of them are still at large, including soldiers, genuine soldiers, and also members of some other government agencies whom they're still trying to get. What did you make of the statement as released by the police and also the testimony of the suspects?
Thank you very much, Mwakwe. And my starting point is to commend the police to have at least started investigation on this matter, started arresting people, as we can see already. Because if you recall, Mwakwe, sometime in 2016, when there was a so-called sting operation against judges of the Supreme Court and Federal High Court judges and other superior courts, I was in this studio calling strenuously for the arrest of the EFCC and DSS officials that carried out that so-called sting operation, because it was totally illegal and uncalled for. And eventually all the 8 judges were discharged and acquitted, showing that there was no merit ab initio in that so-called operation. So if that call I made had been heeded to, and there were arrests like this, and sanctions were meted out, perhaps there would have been no repeat. So I'm very happy that the police is now taking steps to get to the root of this matter. But while we commend the steps so far, that is not enough. In fact, what happened yesterday and the exposition by the police yesterday and the statements made by some suspects has even opened up the more reason why a more meticulous investigation should be done, because it then suggests that there is a big masquerade behind all this charade. If the spokesperson of the police, CP Frank Mba, said that these guys attempted to bring the EFCC into it, if he is telling us that there are some military personnel already at large, we do not know whether they have the Nigerian Army, Navy, Air Force, whether they have the DMI, the DIA, the whatever, DSS. So it tells you the extent to which the cartel went to execute this. No wonder someone like Governor Wike is suspecting that this was an assassination attempt. It could have been put under any guise. Therefore, it's beyond these 14 people now arrested. And by the way, the names given to us yesterday, that of Lawrence Ajodo, had already been in the public domain. I've already got that name since last 1 week or more. The name of Aliyu Umar Ibrahim, the Islamic preacher who made himself a whistleblower and brought the initial affidavit that led to all this, has been in the public domain. The name of the magistrate, Emmanuel Inyana, has been in the public domain. We want to get to the root, the hidden masquerades, the people behind all this. They must be fished out, no matter how highly placed, and drastically punished.
You suspect that there are hidden masquerades behind this?
Oh, yes, certainly, because for them to be intent on bringing in military personnel to give an official cover, for them to be intent on bringing in the EFCC to give an official cover, suggests that they were highly determined. And then it means that we are yet to know the real motive. That is why the investigation needs to be more scrupulous than what we are seeing now. I'm happy that they've started. It's better to be late than never. And it's a good thing, because if the police had been going along this line before, things like this would have been nipped in the bud, and we won't be where we are now.
But he says they're loose cannons. That's the statement. It looks like they're just a ring operating on their own, very much like any other criminal cartel that you'll have.
That's not what it tells me, because the house they went to is the house of the next most senior justice of the Supreme Court. The house they went to is not the house of a judge we don't know. This woman has been in the judiciary for years. There has been no anything scandalous, anything messy connected to her name. Her reputation she had managed to keep intact up to now. Even all the previous incidences when allegations were made, arrests were made, whether true or false. Her name had never been mentioned. So there was no reasonable justification for anybody to want to do that. And if you remember, they had affidavits.
What I'm saying is, if they were or if they are a criminal cartel, what other justifications do they need than, say, maybe monetary inducements, perhaps the promise that there will be money to be made at the end of this? Criminal cartels do not care who you are. They would aim for whoever it is they can get.
That's exactly why it's important to find out who hired this criminal cartel and for what, considering the caliber of the person involved, considering the territory. This is Minister's Hill, my timer. By just the location alone, there's a presumption of responsibility and high profile of the persons that live there. If you remember, there was also a deliberate attempt to mask the identity of the house. The house was supposed to be number 7 Imo River Street.
Number 9.
Number 9 Imo River Street. The search warrant was for number 9 Imo Street. So there was a deliberate decoy. And yet, despite the search warrant being for number 9 Imo Street, you went to number 9 Imo River Street and laid siege and remained there and was intent on remaining there until senior lawyers like Justice Wike, who happened to Governor Wike, who happened to be in Abuja coincidentally on that evening for the PDP issue, and some senior lawyers like, my learned senior friend Chief Chris Uche and others began to go there. That was when Zekome and so on. That was when the so-called siege was called off. And if you see that the magistrate who purportedly issued the search warrant was said to have revoked the search warrant that same day on a weekend in the evening by 7:30 p.m. So the question is, at which court did that magistrate sit to revoke the court order? Who was his court clerk? Who was the court registrar who typed the order? Am I communicating? So you see the kind of heinous, well-calculated incongruity that shows that there is a high-profile personality intent on harassing this innocent woman. And when you look at the fact that we are talking about a woman here, every society that had made progress had been societies that have given due respect and courtesy to their women folk. And when we are seen as people who can treat a mother, a wife, a Supreme Court judge of that caliber in this manner, how do you think foreign investors will look at this country to want to come and put their money? So it has both political, economic, social, and all manner of consequences.
It has indeed deep implications. Because the police has said that, in this instance, it was seen that they were on their own. I mean, that's the insinuation that one can get from what the CP was saying. However, when you listen very carefully, and when you look at the caliber of people who, yes, a number of them, we cannot say what profession they belong to, but a few of them, some of them are genuine lawyers. They're real lawyers. One of them is alleged to be a journalist. And if a quick check of his name would actually say that at some point he had been employed by a reputable media organization. So there are huge questions as to what precisely went down. If indeed, this caliber of people can just be put together we are told that they were just loose cannon. There are very, very big questions as to what exactly can anybody just be subject of this? We could hear tomorrow now that perhaps this set of people are investigating somebody else high up there. You don't think so?
No. That seems to give more credence to Governor Wike's allegations that, number one, it might have been an assassination attempt. Number two, it may have been an attempt to intimidate the judiciary as a whole and Justice Mary Odili in particular. So, and if that is so, it's very serious for the polity. Like you said, you could see allegations that the CSP is fake. I've seen his ID card. There's nothing fake about that ID card. I've seen the person who signed the ID.
You've seen it close up?
I've seen it close up. It doesn't look fake.
Were you there yesterday at the parade?
No, I wasn't there. I've seen it even a week before. That's why I said all those informations we saw yesterday are not new. They're already in the public domain. And that ID card was signed by a highly placed person.
Do you think that he's been denied or disowned by the police?
It's all possibility. That is why I support the stand of the MBA and the body of senior advocates, Bosan, that the president should constitute an independent inquiry. It is not an investigation that should be left to the police alone, considering that the police is by extension an arm of the executive. And that is why on these matters of independence of other arms of the judiciary, legislative, persons like us have been stringently calling for the enforcement of the principle of separation of powers. The section 308 of the Constitution should be amended to either accord the same immunity to the heads of the legislature and the executive and the judiciary as is being enjoyed by the executive, or that section 308 should be scrapped completely so that there is no immunity for any of the three arms and they are all equal. That is what will put an end to this air of executive rascality we are seeing in this country.
The testimony of the lead suspect, the alleged CSP Ajodo, it was a bit troubling. You hear him even in his testimony to the press saying that he's a consultant. He had been doing jobs before now for the AGF. The AGF has come up very strongly to deny and to say that they have absolutely no link whatsoever with him. They dissociate themselves in very strong, I'm trying to see if I can find that statement now, very strong terms from this alleged CSP, so to speak. But then there are deeper questions. Because before now, we did know that there was also an asset recovery, let's say desk or so, and it was found out that the person who was heading it for many months or for almost a year plus or a few years was actually a fake lawyer. We were parading a fake certificate, and he was right in the heart of the people, or right at the heart of a program that was supposed to be an asset recovery program. And there are huge questions as to whether we really do have a database, to be able to certify people at every point in time to say that these people are genuine people. I don't know what you made of that controversy, and how do you think that it can be resolved? Because right now, it is the word of the suspect against the word of the AGF.
But you're very correct about these serious concerns you have raised. This fellow was arresting people, senators, very highly placed persons, recovering assets.
You know the person I'm talking about?
Oh, yes. And only for it to be eventually proven that he had no certificate. He was a fake lawyer. He was even arresting lawyers and was parading himself all over the place. So that raises a very serious integrity question. And that is the kind of question that's been reinforced now by the very confident, courageous assertions of the prime suspect here. I watched him on interview yesterday. He wasn't sounding like somebody who was afraid of what he was saying, of the veracity of what he was saying. He was sounding like someone behind whom there appeared to be some measure of authenticity as to his claims. He was even saying that he had been now in that asset recovery panel for over a year and has been recovering assets for that office. So it's not a claim that can be easily dismissed. Even though the Constitution gives presumption of innocence and allegations must be proved, that again brings us to why there should be an independent investigation. Because, like I said, the police, I'm not discrediting the police. They've done a fine job so far. And under the present IG of police, you can see a whole lot of good things the police are doing. Frank Mba has also been doing very well. But this particular matter, to the extent that police is still part of the executive, and the executive is the arm being fingered, there should be an independent inquiry. And that all, again, now brings us to the solutions I was trying to say. Having called for the solution of amendment of Section 308, there is also the issue of amending the Constitution further to separate the role of the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation. Because right now, those two offices are in one person. And the Minister of Justice is supposed to be the lawyer for the executive arm. If you have an issue with any minister or any arm of the executive, that office of the Minister of Justice automatically represents the executive. And the Section 36 of the Constitution contemplates situations where there will be legal controversies between institutions or individuals and the government.
In all fairness to the minister, though, that's the Attorney General of the Federation, the suspect did say that he was not asked to undertake this particular job. He was not given this particular job. He seemed to be acting alone. If we take his words that indeed he had been consulting before now, why shouldn't we take his words that he was on his own on this particular assignment?
Even if he was on his own, don't forget, we're not saying that he was or must have been working for the Attorney General at this particular instance. The only thing that we are insisting is that whoever he was working for must be unmasked. Otherwise, there will be a possible repeat scenario. Considering that we're in 2021, getting to 2022, preparatory to 2023 election. If you recall, immediately after the 2015 election, there was this sting operation targeting at some judges, even some of whom we knew, like Justice Dean, like
No,
Justice Okoro.
nobody denied that particular.
Yes,
The DSS owned that particular
Exactly,
operation, and
exactly.
there were questions and there were criticisms.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, after that, by 2018,
Yes.
when Justice Onogen was to become chief judge,
Yes.
as the retirement of Mukhtar was approaching, there was an operation in Justice Onogen's home, and a raid, unauthorized. And by the time we screamed Blue Murder, the DSS of police came out to apologize. Oh, sorry, we are looking for something. We made a mistake. We got there just because they didn't find anything incriminating. But yet, soon after, Justice Onogen was made the chief judge, and some persons were not comfortable with his upright stand. An ex parte order appeared from nowhere. A place quasi-judicial, an inferior entity like the Code of Conduct Tribunal, and the man was yanked off. So that kind of scenario repeating again should get us worried. And if you recall that this is a democracy, this is not a military government. All the years of military government in this country, I've been 30-something years in this profession, there was no raid on judges during the military era. So if the military, as dictatorial and arbitrary as they could be, never raided judges, they had respect for the sanctity of the judiciary, how come we're experiencing that in a so-called democracy? So if judges are being raided by pattern, whatever is the motive, whoever is behind this must be clearly unmasked and clear sanctions imposed to serve as deterrent. Otherwise, I promise you, Makwe, this will repeat again, but perhaps in a more deadly dimension.
So, but the difference between the instance, and I'm not dismissing the instances, because the instances which you have, brought to the fore now is what has laid the foundation for this particular siege, whether, fake or genuine. It is what has given the impetus to this, sets of suspected criminals to be able to want to carry this out, because they've seen it happen in so-called genuine cases. At least that time, the authorities did not wash their hands of it. They owned it and they defended it. However, false the defense might seem. That said, this is what we are now currently saying. When this happened, the EFCC immediately washed their hands of it. They said, oh, somebody's trying to set us against the judiciary. The DSS said they have absolutely nothing about it. And the police said they were going to investigate. And this is what we are now getting. There are huge questions as to the impetus that any individual really get up and say, look, I want to set up a criminal cartel. And what we'll be doing is getting affidavits, genuine affidavits, getting a genuine magistrate to go to the homes of highly placed people to go and search their homes. There are really huge questions for the implications of what the police is saying, that, a criminal cartel, if indeed they were a criminal cartel, does exist like this.
Exactly. And that is why this investigation must get to the root. For instance, CP Frank Mba has told us that some of the 7 persons still being sought for are persons working with known security agencies.
Indeed.
Some are military personnel. Therefore, the different military entities should release them for proper investigation. And their identities should be unmasked. That is when we will be sure that this is even just a criminal entity at work.
Should we be focusing on the individuals that are being hired? Because some people will say that, do you just go and ask a policeman or a security or a military man to, oh, come and join me on this? Isn't it their bosses?
Yeah, exactly.
That they speak to?
Yes. To
be able to release these people?
That is why you see me calling for an independent investigation. It is not something that should be left for the police alone. What if some of these persons are genuine police officers? The police will have a duty to protect its reputation. What if those persons are highly placed persons and others were given by highly placed persons in sister security agencies? The issue of esprit de corps will arise at some point. But if we have an ombudsman, that was why you see me calling for this amendment of the Constitution. This issue of separating the office of the AGF and that of the Minister of Justice. Because while the minister would have been for the executive, the office of the Attorney General Federation would have been for the Nigerian masses, the Nigerian people. That is the office that would have independently taken over. An ombudsman would have been appointed, just like what happened in the Ken Starr case in America when the President Clinton was involved, the head of the executive. Yet there was an independent person who could investigate anybody with unlimited powers. That's what we need now to put an end to these misadventures.
It's really very troubling indeed. We'll see how matters eventually proceed because the police has done the initial parade. I don't know what you expect. Yes, you've made the call right now that there should be an independent investigation. However, while we wait for that to happen, these people are currently in the custody of the Nigeria Police Force. They have released a comprehensive statement to that effect, telling the story of how come these people are in their custody. It is we'll wait to see whether the investigation which you call for, will be heeded by the executive arm of government. But assuming that is not done, what should become of the suspect?
It will be dangerous if the executive does not heed this call now. If you recall, when I was in this station in 2016, I called for the arrest of the DSS officers and EFC officials that went on that raid because it was not only illegal, it contravened the constitution, the NJC was not consulted, and there was no prima facie case established against any of the judges. And like I rightly said, each of those 8 judges were roundly discharged. In fact, one of them was Justice Okoro, who died recently of the Supreme Court. And it took 8 months for the Ebonyi State government to build a house for him before he could be buried. That means that man was totally incorruptible. He had no home. He had no enough money to even build a house of his own, a Supreme Court judge. Yet, that was the one that was being arrested on charges of so-called corruption. So we knew that that whole thing was a charade. And we called for the arrest and thorough investigation as to the mastermind. If that was done in 2016, this wouldn't have happened now. And if this continues happening, it erodes the confidence of the citizenry on the judiciary. We lawyers suffer. Everybody suffers. So I hope that we don't get some lawyers who will come on, start defending this kind of misadventure and, national atrocity, because it damages our profession. During the military era, even though there were no register on judges, because people lost confidence in the judiciary, people were going to army barracks to hire majors and brigadiers to go and enforce their rights with other people where there were issues about struggle for property and land and so on. So if they were doing it then, when there were no rates on judges, now if you continue to have rates and people lose confidence in the judiciary, there will be a resort to anarchy and self-help. That is the danger for us here. And for outside investors, foreign investors, who are looking at us as a lawless entity, nobody will bring his money and investment into a lawless society where there is no rule of law. And where also the person involved is a woman, a mother, somebody's wife, and there's no that sensibility in us as to make us civilized people. Others would back off. So we're going to lose a whole lot. That is why this call for independent investigation must be heeded by the executive. Otherwise, it will be seen that there's a cover-up. It will be seen that someone in the executive high up is behind this whole operation. And that will affect the issue of separation of powers, the harmony that should exist between all the arms of government and the confidence the citizens will have on the judiciary.
While we wait for that, while we wait for that to happen, what should happen to the suspect? I mean, today, for instance, what should be happening to them?
Yeah, what should be happening is that the police should be quick because of the constitutional requirement for trial, period. They should be quick in getting at these persons. We've seen examples that when our security agencies are ready to work, they can work. When Rambo did what he did in Nigeria and flew to Benin Republic, because he had to do with Obasanjo's grandchildren, Rambo was fished out within 48 hours. When Mena did what he did and ran out of the country, Mena was brought in by Interpol in no distant time. We have seen, persons of high profile arrested. If someone like Nnamdi Kanu can be, tracked by this government, what is the difficulty in getting criminals that are within? So they should be gotten within 24 hours. There must be some kind of drastic expedition. There must be some kind of speed that shows that the government is serious. I saw CP Frank Mba rightly calling this a very serious offense. And I saw him use that word. And he's a lawyer, he knows the implication. So I expect that to be the mood of the police, that mood of radicality that gives Nigerians quick answer. In developed countries, when you commit a crime, within 24 hours, the police are able to give you the name, the address, even the picture of everybody and the role they played. Our police has that capacity. If you see it and they've gone for foreign missions, our police have always come out the best. They have the capacity if they're willing to do the job, and that's what we want them to do right now.
Well, we'll wait for them, to see how this investigation proceeds and whether or not there will be the establishment of an independent investigation. But we have to thank you so much for coming to share your thoughts this morning. Mr. Isaac Anumodu is a legal practitioner, and we've been speaking on the siege to the home of Supreme Court Justice Mary Odili. Sunrise Daily will continue in a moment. Please stay with us.